So, Majid, let's start with you. The Emirates Green Building Council has released some documents recently on benchmarking sustainability and sustainable projects across sectors, including hospitality and retail. So what do the numbers from that study tell us today about where we are with sustainability in the hospitality and retail sectors?
As you mentioned, we've recently published a study earlier this year on benchmarking, energy and water benchmarking of hotels, malls, and schools. The study was a part of a project in partnership with Dubai Supreme Council of Energy under the umbrella of the United Nations Building Efficiency Accelerator project. We studied the performance of different properties. We've evaluated 85 hotels in the UAE, 27 schools, and 9 malls. And the study showed that there's a performance disparity between the participating properties, between the hotels, between hotels and resorts, the malls themselves. For instance, there's a big difference or a huge difference between the best performers and the worst performers, between the lowest consumers and the highest consumers. For malls, lowest consumer consumes around 380 kilowatt hours per meter squared and around 5 liters per visitor. If you compare the lowest consumer with the highest consumer, you would find a difference of 40% or 30 to 40% on the energy side, while around 50 to 60% on the water side. For hotels, the results were similar, also a huge difference between the highest consumers, the best performers, and the lowest performers. The best performers' consumption was below, on the energy side, below 170 kilowatt hours per meter squared, while on the water side, less than 150 liters per guest night. The best performers or the lowest consumers give an indication about the most efficient on the energy and the water side, but however, performance in many cases depend on the services provided by the property. We should not forget that. So in hotels, the number of pools, the number of conference rooms, the number of restaurants, all of these are parameters that impact the consumption and not only the area or the spatial efficiency of the property. In malls as well, there's also some parameters such as if the mall has energy-intensive or water-intensive attractions, such as a ski slope in a mall or a fountain. These all the parameters that might impact the performance of the property. But overall, the consumption on the mall side might be closer to, on the energy side, closer to 300, 400 kilowatt hours per meter squared as a best practice, and on the hotel side, 170, 150 kilowatt hours per meter squared.
Okay, and has that benchmarking been carried out in comparison to other regions in the world? How do we sit compared to the rest of the world?
Yeah, we've conducted that analysis. However, in many cases, if you want to compare with international benchmarks, you have to look at the climate, you have to normalize the climate, to look at the operations as well. With hotels, definitely the consumption here is higher, especially on the water side.
Okay, and Philippa, when it comes to designing these wonderful hospitality projects and retail projects, how are you seeing that in the market in terms of sustainability today? Are we compared to where we were 10 years ago? We've had Estidama that's now been in force since 2008, I think, in the Dubai Green Building Regs since 2014, so 5 to 10 years. Where is sustainability today compared to, say, where it was 5 to 10 years ago?
I think with regards to the hospitality sector, the awareness, the market awareness is really there, and coming off the back of Climate Week in New York, I think there's no denying that the clients are really aware of sustainability and of the issues, and when they're traveling, they're really looking for kind of eco-tourism destinations. So we're really seeing an uptake in kind of interest from the client side in considering, health and wellness in the developments, sustainability, more transparency as well. Your guests are really demanding actual understanding of what the energy and the water performance is, having third-party certifications to verify that what they're saying is true. So I think the market awareness side of it is really starting now to impact the design and construction. Especially I think around the health and wellness. So we've seen that as a real big trend in the region here. There's been a lot of uptake of new wellness certifications. So you've got the WELL certification from the IWBI. You've got Fitwell, which is, I believe, not currently in the region, but potentially some projects will go for that in the future. Biophilic design, having more greenery included with in the internal spaces, giving people more of a connection to nature when they're staying in these developments. So that's probably been the main trend that we've seen, and it's been probably more driven from the client side because they understand the market and they understand what the guests want, and they want to differentiate themselves. So yeah, that's probably been the greatest trend rather than from the regulatory side.
Okay, and Krishna, as an ESCO, as someone who sees buildings from an operational point of view, what sort of systems are you seeing in place now, buildings currently, when it comes to sustainability?
Yeah, coming to sustainability, ESC looks it into the comprehensive angle of sustainability is to do with economy, social as well as the environmental impacts. So we have actually 3 divisions in ESC which are related to sustainability. That is, one is the energy division, which I am heading, and there is a water conservation department, and also there is an EHS department doing the environmental impact assessments, marine impact assessments, and so on. So with this comprehensive point of view, we actually do the energy efficiency studies, and for the energy division where I am related to, our goal is actually to conserve the energy and water, and to put it short, to bring down the energy bills of any industry or any commercial or a residential facility. So having said that, when we actually approach the industries, it is more towards the process and how we can actually reduce the consumption of big items like boilers, furnaces, and so on, which are high consumption units. For example, recently we did an audit in one of the ceramic factories here, and it was very, that we had some very, what I would say, very impressive results where a sizable amount of energy could be saved by, attacking the processes there. Coming to the residential sector or the commercial sector like the hospitality or the retails and so on, our main concentration will be on the HVAC side and the lighting, and on the HVAC itself, the big ticket items like the chillers, the compressors, the pumps, and so on. So what we do is an instrumented audit of all these big ticket items in the facility, collect the data, and then we do regression analysis of what they are supposed to run, how much efficiency they are supposed to give, and what they are actually giving, and what is the gap, and what could be done. It could be a minor modification, it could be a retrofit, whatever it is, we suggest it with the ROI to the client, and then we go ahead and implement it, and then finally show the results. For this, we have some efficient professionals who are qualified to do this, like the certified energy managers, auditors, CMVPs, and all that. So this is how our business goes, and maybe I can tell about the challenges in maybe the next question, so that others can.
Yeah, we'll move on to some of those, I think, Krishna. Okay, and Jason, from your point of view, working with clients, particularly on the money side as well, when it comes particularly up front during the feasibility or the initial cost plans, how much are you seeing clients buy into the sustainability idea that yes, it's a good idea to invest now because A, it's good for the environment, B, there's some kind of ROI? Are you seeing much of a take-up from the developers in the region?
Yeah, I mean, you can see a drive in that direction. I know initially people will think, they'll look at the the cost initially, you know, or the money you would save, that tangible saving that you can feel, rather than, you know, like the last panel touched on, the actual life cycle saving over the long run. Say, for example, I don't know, say where buildings are moving to, you know, 100% LED on the, you know, the green building scheme, or I mean, a lot of people will be, you know, maybe, I don't think it's actually a surprise now, LED lighting isn't actually more costly. You know, with the advances in technology, you can probably get it for the same cost, if not less, and probably last 5 times longer. You know, use of grey water TSE for irrigation, that sort of thing. You're seeing that, you know, it's more prominent now. Solar collection, condensate collection systems, that sort of thing. You know, I think it will benefit the project in the long run, but often people may be more interested in that tangible saving, but I think they're moving away from that. They are considering those, you know, long-term savings.
Okay, and Philippa, for when you're receiving RFPs from clients, how much of a sustainability agenda is there generally from clients? Are you seeing comply with statutory regulations, or are you seeing something in addition to that?
It's a bit of a mix still. So we're still seeing the just comply with regulations, minimal requirements. We don't want to increase our capital cost. But we are starting to see, especially from the high-end developers and the developers that are looking to attract the either international investment or international tourists, then they are becoming more aware of the requirements that they need to put in place for sustainability to attract those markets. Often case we are having to go to the clients and kind of try to help them understand the benefits of sustainability and of incorporating these aspects into the design. So we are trying to look at things like ROI, long-term investment, life cycle costing. And when the client is the owner-operator, going to be the owner-operator, such as is typical for hotels, then they tend to become a bit more interested when you start talking about life cycle costing. So yeah, it's still a mix, but we're starting to see a bit more of it, especially for the more, I guess, kind of visionary clients and forward-thinking clients. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're fortunate enough to have on the panel today one of the most forward-thinking clients, I think, currently in the region. Yeah. Dr. Rusty, how are you going to ensure that all of these fantastic directives on the Red Sea development are going to be seen through the design phase and through construction, and that we're not going to lose the vision that is currently, you know, so key to the project's success?
Well, from the analysis our folks have done, they really think the luxury end of the market is going to be committed to sustainability, and that what will make, in addition to the natural beauty, the fact that we're trying to do things right over the life cycle is what we think will attract a lot of people, you know, if nothing else, to remove the guilt of them contributing to more damage of the environment is actually feeling good, which is why we're actually having, we're going to be establishing kind of an eco-science center where it's not just like an aquarium where they're seeing displays. We're actually going to get people involved with actually helping with the conservation themselves, and these aren't, you know, just school children. These are going to be CEOs and you know, people of means that want to give back, and we're going to try to be designing opportunities for them to actually feel like they're actually making a contribution. Like when we're building these reefs, we're actually trying to find ways, can we make them signature reefs to where they can actually then go revisit their reef, the one that they helped create. It'll have a signature of them. They can show their kids then, or their grandkids, you know, 10 years later. This is the reef I started back in, you know, 2030 or whatever. And you know, so trying to build that experience where it becomes personal, that they are vested in the success of our sustainability efforts is what we're striving for.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that recognizes kind of the trend of the tourism industry. People want authentic experiences. They don't want a holiday anymore. They want an experience. They want to be able to come back and say, you know, I remember that 10 years ago when I spent that week at the Red Sea, and this is what we did, and it leaves kind of a legacy every time they go on an experience. So that's definitely the trend of the market, and it's great to see kind of clients that are starting to understand that and go with it.
I would like to add one point here on the environmental performance of hotels. As the national operator of Green Key, other than the energy and water conservation measures that hotels implement, there are other measures that we've seen that they are implementing to improve their sustainability performance. For example, they're trying to engage more with guests to save on energy and water. Through campaigns, through programs, for instance, towel reuse programs or linen reuse programs. These are ways where hotels can engage with guests, raise the awareness, and impact the energy and water consumption. There's also focus on waste segregation by staff, or even offering that opportunity to guests. And we've also seen a particular focus on food waste. Some hotels are implementing food waste monitoring systems to know the amounts of waste, the food waste they're wasting, and what type exactly of food waste is being wasted, and implement measures and strategies to reduce that food being wasted. And there's other also measures that can be taken in hotels to improve their sustainability performance, working with the supply chain, with their suppliers, the products that they use for washing and cleaning, if it's eco-labeled or not. Also, the type of paint they use during refurbishment. All of these are parameters that improve the sustainability performance in a hotel, in addition to energy and water conservation measures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a holistic approach.
Yes.
To the building's life cycle. Jason, so I think with any form of sustainability, it's important that that it's thought out from inception, and it's not a bolt-on later where it can become a gimmick or not effective or very difficult to implement. How can developers and clients and us as professionals ensure that everybody works together from a very early stage, the consultant, the contractor, the developer, to ensure that the sustainability goals within projects are met?
Well, it's actually something I've discussed with a colleague of mine, Dave, who sat in the front row there. We both did our dissertation in value management. And it's about getting the key people there from the outset. And I think the last panel even touched on getting the FM guys in, you know, getting all your right stakeholders in, the right professionals, consultants, you know, and I think, again, one of the last panel touched said, right, you're going to do it for 50% less. That shouldn't be the attitude adopted. You should have the right people there from the outset, all working together, and essentially, you know, everyone, you know, has their input. You listen to everyone's idea, you know, implement everything from the outset. Essentially, you know, if there is a budget, you know, people can work together and see what they can do to get within that budget. You know, later on you'll feel the long-term benefits of that. Whereas, you know, I think at the moment, or previously, we're in a market where, right, that's our budget, we don't care what you say, that's what we need to hit, and let's just move forward with the project. I don't think that's the right thing to do, is having the right people there from the outset. It may cost a little bit more, but the long-term benefits will be felt.
And do you see any advantages in early contractor engagement through design and build projects or anything along those lines to assist?
I think well, there were two different opinions in the last panel. I mean, it can work. I don't think it's been used that widely here. Essentially, yeah, you are pushing the risk on the contractor. I don't think you know, everyone's familiar with the whole design and build principle. Maybe people can be made more aware of it, you know. But design and build, yes, it can work. It does work, obviously. But I don't think it's as prominent here as it is in other parts of the world.
Okay. Dr. Rusty, what do you think the challenges are that you're going to face in trying to implement these sustainable directives through the Red Sea project?
One of the things I was just going to bring up that often isn't done, typically for contracts, for construction, there's monitoring associated with it, say it's water quality or the immediate things, or what are the impacts of construction. One of the things we're proactively doing, Separate from construction is establishing a site-wise, very comprehensive monitoring of the ecosystem as a whole. So we can be monitoring the status and trends of how, not just this project, because we have 60 different assets, hotels or infrastructure, or what. Those are all going to be separate contracts and stuff, and there's going to be monitoring associated with the impacts of this one and that one. We're going to take a higher level view of how is the system doing from the impacts from all of these things. When we from construction to operations, there's going to be different impacts, and we're going to be monitoring how the system is doing, how the fishes are doing, how the corals are doing, how the turtles are doing, how the seabirds are doing, how the water chemistry is doing, and collectively then adjusting how we're managing the whole of the system and how all the operators are, again, with that long-term goal. So we're going to have some successes and failures. We want early warnings if we're going to have things that are going, not going in a positive direction. So we can change course. Oh, this is having an impact that we didn't anticipate. Let's correct that sooner rather than waiting until we've actually had a major disruption of the ecosystem. Yeah. And I think the more, again, that's kind of this concept master planning, is have that big picture view of the whole, not just every asset, which needs to be managed as well, but within the framework of a master concept plan that's long-term, not just construction. It includes the operational component.
Okay. And Krishna, what are some of the challenges you see when it comes to sustainability and implementing it in hospitality and retail projects?
Yeah. One is the major thing is the mindset change that has to happen. The commitment from the top management of the properties. As Dr. Asti was also pointing out earlier in the question and answer session, since he has the commitment from the topmost leader of the country, he is able to actually achieve better things. Yeah. So that likewise, everywhere the commitment from the top management of the facility where we need to do the conservation measures, that should be present. It's not only just looking at the charges or the cost. But again, having said that, sustainability or environmental influence implementation is not just only an expenditure, because it's like an investment which will be giving an ROI, and after that, after the ROI period, it's going to be a saving forever for the property. So that is the way the things should be looked into. This is one of the points. Other points is when we bring in innovations, because the thing is that this field of energy and water conservation, or for any other thing in the hospitality and retail industry especially, is a very dynamic changing field. So even like someone pointed out in the first panel that they do the design 6 years before a property is really coming into existence. So by the time there is a lot of innovation, a lot of changes that's happening, a lot of disruptions in itself in the business. So we need to be keeping in pace with that, and the customers should also be willing to accept the innovative things that are there. For example, earlier we used to have the heating systems. Even now, heating system costs a lot in the hotels, but you can have a solar thermodynamic system, for example, where even the panels need not face the sun. They can be in a hot and humid atmosphere, and that is sufficient, like a car park. And then from there, you can actually use that energy to heat the water for the consumption of the guests, as well as for the swimming pool and all that. Similarly, people are not thinking about certain things, like the ghost power, for example. Ghost power or phantom power or vampire power, they call it actually, the names. Many of the people are not aware of even these things actually. The ghost power in US alone is consuming something like 19 million US only by keeping the items in standby mode instead of switching them off completely. So this is the ghost power, or the vampire power. So to address that, we see when we suggest solutions, we see in many hotels what they do. They have a card which could be removed by which is the key of the room as well. So when you remove that, okay, it's going to switch off the power of the lights. That's what mainly we see actually. But the main thing is it should be hooked up in such a way that it should be switching off even the plug points. Because the TV, the guest could have just switched on into switched off, and it could be in the standby mode. And then like when he is leaving the day, the whole day it's in standby mode. A TV on a standby mode consumes around 48 watts, 48 to 50 watts. So it is something like 7 LED lamps. So, that kind of approach and innovative thinking should come. And for those things, some modifications would be required, and the hotels should be ready to do that. And not only that, like what Majid was mentioning, the education of the customers, the campaigns that could be run for many things, even for the plastics, like Dr. Rusty was pointing out in the morning. This should become an extinct thing soon. We should not see these bottles at all. Because to make one bottle like this, it consumes 2 liters of water and 0.25 liters of fuel to make this one. So every time we do this as a one-time use and we throw it, and it's going to be again a problem for the environment also. It's not going to disintegrate fast. So 50, 60 years back, we didn't have this, but hotels were running. The conferences were taking place like this also. Maybe I want to see one day a picture here where people, maybe it could be a charged water with orange or cucumber or something, and people pour water from that and take. I want to see that actually. Why to have this one? So like this, so many revolutionary things are to be thought about, and people should be acceptable to that. And one good news in this is that the millennials are welcoming changes, and they want to be a part of the environmental sustainability. So that is one good news that is always coming in any website you go anywhere. Millennials are ready to accept changes for the sake of environment in their tourism or whatever. So that is the way we can actually revolutionize this industry and make it more towards sustainability. And as we said, even the food waste, it need not be always converted to menu. It could be even given to labor camps or somewhere where, it's not the real waste, but, a conference is arranged, maybe 100 people are expected and only 50 turned up. The 50 is not consumed. It could be actually distributed to some labor camps and all that. So finally, it's a social responsibility also for the hospitality industry. So these are some of the things I want to share.
Okay. Thank you, Krishna. Philippa, what are some of the challenges you're facing from a design perspective when it comes to designing these developments?
Well, I want to touch on what Krishna just said. I don't necessarily think it's that millennials are willing to accept these. I think it's that the youth are actually driving the change. And it's something that we should probably all be a little bit embarrassed about, that it's not us driving this change, it's actually the youth that is coming up, who have no power to come in and look at a design of a hotel and say you need to change it. They have no power over the operation of the hotel, but they're the ones that are actually making the most change and having the most impact. So it needs to be a collective push to further the sustainability agenda and to really push to make sure that clients are aware of the impact that this can have. They're aware of the cost savings. Cost consultants should be considering it as part of their assessments, even if it's not necessarily included in the scope of work. It can just be oh, by the way, did you know that you should also be considering life cycle of costs? It's just planting the seeds in the clients' heads so that they start to think a bit more sustainably, so they start to think about these issues, because that's probably the biggest challenge that we're facing. It's often having to persuade clients, and it should be a collective effort to persuade clients of the benefits that they can achieve through kind of sustainable design.
Okay. And Jason, how do we overcome this? What's the $1 million question? We put a sustainable idea out there on the table, which we think is great. The client simply doesn't want to go down that path. It could be financial limitations generally, or it could be something else. How do we overcome these problems?
Well, it's like you said, making them more aware, maybe. And maybe we don't do that enough. Maybe we need to make them aware that, right, this is, you've got a saving here if you go in this direction, but however, over the next 5 to 10 years, this is how much you're going to save. And maybe, we're not making them aware enough of that. And you're right, something maybe we could look at. But yeah, I think it is just awareness. It's an awareness of the savings or the impacts that certain materials or use of certain technology could have. I think you're right.
Another challenge, which also is an opportunity, because we have in the GCC especially and in the MENA region, we have lack of government initiatives on sustainability and green buildings in particular. We're lucky in the UAE to see some Emirates launching and implementing their green building regulations, such as Istidama in Abu Dhabi, As-Safat in Dubai, and recently Berjil in Ras Al Khaimah. But definitely government initiatives mandating minimum green building requirements would definitely help. I would like to add another point on the cost, because many people are talking about, okay, green building, sustainability, but it costs more. Globally, it has been proving that green buildings are affordable, one, and they reduce, definitely, as mentioned by other panelists, operational costs and life cycle costs. If you look at the studies, the added cost on the design and the construction of a green building is less than 12%, and 12% corresponds to a design and construction of a zero carbon building. So we need more studies here, because this is a global study which takes different green buildings and analyze the financial or cost effectiveness of these buildings. Maybe we need more case studies to be published here in the region to show the business case of green buildings, and this can definitely help in raising awareness of why it's important and it's feasible as well.
I think one of the guys I spoke to, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but his take on it was your green building, depending on the level of LEED certification, whether it's a bronze, silver, gold, or platinum, he said he would consider increments of, say, 2, 4, 6, up to 10% increases in each type.
Yeah, we always forget that the target shouldn't be the rating. So we shouldn't be targeting, okay, we need LEED Platinum, or the target is to have a building that's affordable and green building as well. So this is always the target. Maybe we have certain trends in the region where we want to have the most efficient, the most sustainable, and in many cases it would add on the cost. But adding on the cost, this doesn't mean it is sustainable, because affordability is one important pillar for sustainability. So the target should be to construct more green buildings rather than to construct highly rated buildings.
I think as well it depends on what your baseline is. So it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. If you've got a building that is, very low budget, they don't have a focus on quality, then it is of course going to be a big cost impact to uplift to be a sustainable building. But we don't really have that case anymore, especially in the hospitality industry. The developments in the buildings are really high quality, and therefore most of them are achieving these requirements and these certifications and just need minor kind of tweaks and checks and just a little bit of support to really hit that kind of high standard, and the cost impact is nowhere near what it used to be in this market. And the cost is also coming down as people become more aware. So when LEED was first brought into the market and Istidama was first brought into the market, contractors and architects would really kind of hike their prices because they weren't aware of what the cost impact was actually going to be. There's more of an understanding now that these materials are available in the market. It's not actually that big of an impact on the design, and the costs have come down significantly. So it's about getting up-to-date data that shows the current cost impact, because I'm sure you'll be surprised that it will be very, very low, close to zero, and what the baseline is. If it's a high-quality building, it should be sustainable as standard.
Okay, Majid, just on the Emirates Green Building Council, can you maybe share with us the role of the Green Building Council and what you can do to support sustainability for our developers and clients out here?
As Emirates Green Building Council, we are a non-governmental organization, and our aim mainly is to advance green building principles in the UAE, and we act as a catalyst for collaboration between different stakeholders, between the private sector, the public sector, and academia. So we work closely with the government to drive policy towards sustainability and recently towards decarbonization. We also work closely with the hospitality sector, so we operate several programs with hotels. We operate an international eco-label, Green Key, with hotels. We have trainings. As an educational platform, we offer trainings that are specific to hoteliers about sustainability and green buildings. And we also, as I mentioned, the benchmarking studies that we've done. So there's a lot of work on the educational part, and also events, trainings, publications.
Okay. Dr. Rusty, so with your experience elsewhere in the world, what would be your advice here to local developers who may have a finite budget, but they really want to promote the sustainable effort? How would you encourage them, or what could you do to encourage them to go down that path and not purely look at capital costs when it comes to a project?
I think, as Jason said, I think it often just comes down to education and awareness and building the long-term economic model to show them that over the long term, these sustainability measures in the short term will be more cost effective than the status quo. And I think people are often only looking financially at the short term, and I think it's an education process to show. I mean, because people also want their long-term financial security as well. So I think it's just an education process to get people thinking beyond the quarterly statement or the quarterly report and really looking down into the future of their personal and their investment finances. And that's an education process. I think somebody earlier said, starting with the youth. They're going to be the clients of the future. Unfortunately, in many cases, they're already on board, but building the financial case for their futures as well.
Thank you. And getting specifically into alternative products, which can make the environmental space a bit more friendly. So, looking at alternative, I don't know, wood or something along those lines. What can we bring into our projects to make them more environmentally friendly?
In terms of products, I mean, there's a lot of products available on the market now. The supply chain has responded to specifically ESTDAMA and the green building regulations, and it being a mandatory requirement now. So things like FSC certified wood and the low emitting paints, these are readily available on the market. And in a lot of cases at a very low cost and to zero cost impact. For the example of the paints, it's no additional cost to get a low VOC paint. So there are a lot of products on the market now. The supply chain is struggling a little bit with the new health and well-being requirements, so that's probably where we need to focus on increasing the awareness within the supply chain and increasing the availability of supply, particularly for things like low-emitting furnitures and items that have not been considered in previous rating systems. So that's probably the direction that the supply chain is going in now. But there are a lot of products available, and it's come on a long way in the last kind of 5 to 10 years.
And Jason, would you agree? Would you agree that there's alternative products there that are performing as well and don't cost any more than the traditional construction products used?
Yeah, I mean, well, again, I want to touch on it, but say, for example, LED lighting. I think the advances in technology now mean that it's not costing as much. It's reducing your power load to buildings, and it's lasting 5 times longer, at least, I think. You guys will know more than me, but yeah, that sort of thing you can look at and say, yes, definitely, as an example. The other thing I don't know if you touched on it already, but construction waste. I don't know what's happening. Is there an initiative to use more of that? Maybe, for example, you could use it, for landscaping, furniture, that sort of thing. I think that's something, you go on any construction site, you can see the amount of waste, and whether it's your block work or, I think that's something else that could be looked at, and some sort of drive to using more of that.
Yeah, I think probably as a kind of wider topic, it's more about resource efficiency. So whilst the products are available on the market, they're not always the most sustainable, although they might be sustainable in some areas. They might have flown a long way to get here. So there may be other issues related. They might be at high cost. If you have to source things out of Europe, then they do have a cost impact. So it's more kind of smart design, making sure that you're considering reduction of material use wherever possible. and reuse of waste materials is always a good one to think about. What the end of life of your materials is going to be within your site, and if it can't be reused or recycled within the site, where is it going to go after, and is that sustainable, or should you think about using a different material that would avoid that waste? Yeah, these are kind of the wider topic.
One final question to each panelist, if you can answer maybe just in one sentence. You know, to each individual, that's the delegate that's come here today, what would you like them to take away from this panel session? I'm sure we're not here just for the free coffee. We'd like to make a difference in some way. What can people take away to start making a difference in their workplace? Philippa?
I think probably the collaboration. Like I mentioned, it's increasing the awareness and making sure that you know, the full market is on board with the sustainability vision. So I think collaborating with each other to look into things like ROI, you know, supporting each other when meeting with clients, just to discuss sustainability a bit more. So I think that's kind of a key message from me.
Majid?
The key message for me is sustainability is affordable. It can be affordable. It's not something that you have to pay a lot, and we have to educate others in the market about this and to showcase that, to maybe if we have case studies, to provide them and to support that. I believe this is one key message from you.
Krishna?
Yeah, in fact, I would have two takeaways from me. One is that in this part of the world, even though we have a proper accreditation system for companies like us who are ESCOs, who are eligible to do the energy efficiency studies and do the retrofits and so on, there is no legislation for or a compulsion for anyone to do these energy efficiency studies and prove that they are doing something for reduction of the electricity and water consumption. So one of the takeaways from me would be that there should be a legislative requirement that everybody over a particular amount of consumption should subject themselves to an energy efficiency study and prove that they are actually saving every year in a continual way. And the second one would be that, like Majid was telling, it is not an expenditure. Anything that is spent towards sustainability is an investment, and it should be, it will be paying off in future towards the operation and maintenance cost.
Okay, thank you, Krishna. Dr. Rusty?
I think mine was really that long-term view. In the longer term, the short-term investments pay off, and we just need to kind of look at a longer horizon rather than, again, everything being, you know, how much profit is it going to make in 3 months or this year's, you know, return on investment. Look at the long-term investment, and generally then it's going to be better for everybody involved, and the environment will do much better.
Okay. Finally, Jason?
Yeah, I would agree with you. Look at making people more aware, looking at the longer-term benefits, but also I think right people there from the outset. That's a key thing. Even if it costs a bit more from the outset, having the right people there is what's going to benefit everyone.
Okay, thanks very much.